Kevin, it's so great to have you here at the Alts in the Valley. I found your session really fascinating, and you touch on so many important elements when it comes to technology, AI, for the customers that we serve. I want to double click on fund of fund managers because they're sitting in so much data. And I'm just interested, as you work with them, what do you think is the AI use case, or how AI could profoundly change different elements in the process, given the data that they're sitting on?
What we're going to realize is that who owns the data is going to be really the differentiator when it comes to AI, right? A lot of these AI tools will start to make better processes, better products, and all those different things, but it's like who has that data to be able to utilize it? And fund of funds are in a good spot because they're in all these different funds across different markets, they're going to be able to have that information. So now all that information is really kind of buried in their document management systems, right? And it's not being, easily utilized to make decisions, right? So what happens now is some analysts will go in and kind of say, let's pull the data for all the different venture funds or mid-market buyout funds and kind of put that together in an Excel spreadsheet. And then when a question's asked about something that might have been new, the analysts go back and go look through all those documents again and kind of like add another column to the Excel spreadsheet, right? So you can see how that process takes a lot of time. But for this fund of funds, now if you have some kind of AI tool layered on top of that, you're able to kind of pull those documents out of your document management system, create some kind of dashboard, and then have that be available in a way that goes across your organization.
I come mostly from public markets, and I have a data and technology background. And I was fascinated when I joined Alter Domus how different the state of data is in private markets. But I think if we can get to that point where we democratize data at level set, this market will function very, very different. And interesting to hear, given the level of sophistication of secondary markets, right? Again, as we think about future applications of AI in this market, where do you see the biggest levels to optimize and to benefit from?
I think with secondaries markets, one of the biggest things where they're going to be able to optimize is the evaluation of interest in a big portfolio sale or purchase, right? So let's think about they're going to purchase 100 interest kind of portfolio from a particular seller. Right now, that analysis is manual, right? You're looking through kind of all the different financial statements, all the different data from all those different funds, kind of analyze that across all 50 interests, and then figure out kind of what pricing kind of makes sense, either for those interests individually or for the entire kind of portfolio sale that's going to happen. And that takes a lot of time to analyze that data. And I think what we're going to start to see is the ability for secondary funds to analyze a lot of those big portfolio sales a lot more quickly, come to a pricing a lot more quickly, and also gives them the ability to then slice and dice the portfolios in a lot more efficient ways. And then it also gives them the ability to look at more deals, right? So now you can say like there's this 50 interest thing that's looking at, that would take up so much time on a particular team to do that analysis that they don't have time to then analyze something else that's in the market, right? So all of a sudden you've taken that part of your team kind of offline to do just this analysis for this deal. But if we can do that more quickly, then they can become free to look at other potential deals more quickly. So then now you have your current team being more active across the market more quickly than with the same amount of people.
So let me finish with my final question around over-reliance on AI and the role of governance. And the reason why I asked that, I joined a very small group, I'm part of the American Society for AI, and I had the opportunity to look at many portfolio companies, whether they are in biotech, healthcare, you name it. there's a common thread around over-reliance on AI and the importance of governance that institutions can put through around and the guardrails. How do you think about that?
I think governance is really important. What you don't want to happen is an issue happens in your organization that was an AI-driven issue, right? A hallucination kind of lives throughout the data, and it was used to make an investment decision, and your investment then blows up, and everyone's like, well, how do we make this decision? And then once you start to drill down, you realize it was an AI hallucination that was a major part of the decision-making process. So how you counteract that is having kind of your AI governance policy in place. When is AI used? How is it used? For what processes? Where is the human validation built into the process, right? AI at this point, and maybe in 20 years it's not, AI at this point is a first draft of things, right? So you put data in, outputs come in, the human validation still needs to exist. And for every step in the process, there should be human validation. We talked about it being kind of a life cycle for portfolio investments now. So your diligence report gets produced from AI, first draft, human needs to go through and validate that information. Then there's a draft and IC memo that gets produced based on that diligence. Human needs to go through and kind of validate that IC memo, right? All these different things need kind of that human layer before it kind of moves on to the next step. And that's critical in having that in kind of your governance policy. Who has access to the AI and with what data, right? And then the final part about it is also the training, right? You want to make sure your staff is appropriately trained on how to use AI, what circumstances where something's happening that they need to kind of flag that up either internally to your internal IT department or to the service provider about some hallucinations or some things that are breaking down. But you don't know that until you train your people about what they need to look for and how they need to utilize it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.